Good morning. Let me start. I'm going to start off by saying something uncomfortable. All right. It's a lot of people got into real estate during a market that made average look talented. Okay. And I'm not saying that's you, but a lot of us got into real estate in a market that made average look talented. Okay. For several years, houses practically sold themselves. You could undermarket a property, overprice it, do very little follow-up, and still get rewarded because the market was doing the heavy lifting. That market is gone. And honestly, that's not bad news though, right? Because markets like this one separate activity from skill. Today we are operating in a market where buyers hesitate, sellers resist reality, interest rates change psychology, and every conversation requires more clarity, more trust, and more competence than it did a few years ago. That means one thing: the role of the realtor just became more important, not less. Because when things are easy, people question why they need us. Because when things get harder, they discover exactly why they do. Right now, buyers are nervous. They are watching rates. They are reading headlines. They're asking if prices will fall. They're wondering if they should wait. And many of them are frozen, not because they lack desire, but because they lack confidence. That confidence often comes from trust. Hello.
Hi.
We're made to everybody do this. You have to introduce yourself when you come in.
You're lying.
Nope, everybody did it.
You don't have to stand up, but who
I'm
are you?
Heather. I am brand new. I know a couple people here. So, hi.
Welcome. All right, kick it back in. And many of them are frozen, not because they lack desire, because they lack confidence. That confidence often comes from us. Not from hype, not from pressure, not from but from clarity. Sellers are in a different battle. Many are still mentally living in yesterday's market. You've gone on a listing appointment recently, you probably have realized that. They remember what their neighbor got 18 months ago and believe their house deserves the same response, even though buyer behavior has changed completely. And that creates one of the hardest parts of our job today: telling the truth without losing trust. Because right now, pricing incorrectly doesn't just slow momentum, it damages leverage. The first 2 weeks on market matter more now than many sellers realize. And here's what I believe: this market is not punishing agents, it's exposing them. It is exposing who knows how to communicate, who knows how to negotiate, who knows how to lead calmly when emotions rise, who can explain affordability, not just square footage, who can guide people through uncertainty instead of becoming uncertain themselves. Because consumers today do not need door openers, they need interpreters. Hey. They need someone who understands what is happening in North Texas, not nationally, not on social media, but neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street. And in a place like Texas where growth is still real, migration is still happening, and opportunities still exist, the agent who understands local truth will always outperform the one repeating national fear. Dallas is not behaving exactly like Fort Worth. Denton is not identical to Collin County. New construction is affecting some areas more aggressively than resale. Inventory behaves differently depending on price point. That means the winning realtor right now is not the loudest one. It is the one who knows what is actually happening. Because in this market, average effort is visible. Average effort is visible. Skill is visible. Discipline is visible. And trust is everything. So today, I want us to talk honestly about where the market really is, what clients are really thinking, and how you position yourself so that you are not just surviving the market, but becoming more valuable because of it. Because the truth is, easy markets create transactions, harder markets create professionals. And some of the strongest careers in this room may be built in conditions just like what we have right now. All right, there's my intro. Okay. What's going on in this market? Who snuck in? Okay, you snuck in. Introduce yourself.
I am Katia. I'm Katia. I've been with Post Oak only since I started for 5 years. Been at this for 5 years.
Yeah, glad you're here.
Yeah.
Andrew snuck in. Go ahead.
What's up, y'all? Andrew, agent extraordinaire. 10 years.
10 years. Glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
The title of this class is the current North Texas real estate market and how realtors should position themselves. I'm going to take the first part of this, and then we're going to switch, and I'm going to go start cooking your burgers, and he's going to finish it off. But let's start with reality. What market are we actually in? Key current themes in North Texas right now, and those of you that are pretty active right now, I think you'll agree with a lot of this, but chime in if you have thoughts on it. Here's our key current themes. Inventory has risen compared to the ultra tight COVID years, right? So inventory's on the rise. Homes are sitting longer. Days on market, I think I saw was 109 average days on market. Buyers are more cautious because of interest rates, but interest rates have ticked down a little bit, so that's good news. Are they still trending downwards, or?
It's been a little rough in the last week or two.
Yeah,
A little bit
yeah.
roller coaster, but still
A lot of
pretty
macro
solid.
things happening
Yeah.
that nobody knows how that'll affect it. Buyers are more cautious because of the rates. Sellers are still mentally anchored in 21 and 22 pricing. It's hard to sell now if your neighbor sold 2 years ago and got here, and really numbers are here. Price reductions are common. New construction is competing hard with resale, especially the big builders. The D.R. Hortons are offering lots of incentives. Concessions are back. Closing costs, rate buy downs, repairs. John, I think it was you. It didn't work out because of the appraisal, but you had what, $10,000-$12,000 in concessions on that deal prior to the appraisal. I just closed one with $9,000 in concessions. That was unheard of 2 years. I mean, did not happen 2 years ago. So concessions are back. This is not a crash market, okay? It is a normalization market. This is really a historical norm. These things, what some of you experienced over the last couple years was the departure from norm. That matters because fear creates paralysis, and if you look at any market change with a fearful lens, that potentially causes paralysis for you, for your clients. I've seen that year after year with agents, and when agents get paralysis because of fear, they do nothing, and when you do nothing, you get nothing. And so don't let market changes fear you. Matter of fact, embrace it, knowing that a lot of your competition will be fearful, and it's the perfect time to gain market share. In many North Texas submarkets, well-priced homes still sell. We've actually seen an uptick in sales for 2026 over 2025, so that's good. I personally have had a couple listings recently that sold in less than a week. So priced right homes sell. Poorly priced homes sit. Condition matters again. Presentation matters again. We are no longer in a market where average effort gets rewarded. All right? We are no longer in a market where average effort gets rewarded. Let's talk about buyers specifically. What are buyers feeling right now? Payment shock is real, right? If the last time they searched or got estimates on prices was back when rates were at 4%, and then they go get, maybe they don't do that and they go, contract on a house and then get that estimate. Payment shock. I have seen deals fall apart because once they get the numbers, they're like, oh, that's way higher than I expected. And so maybe a little due diligence up front on our part, making sure they understand affordability and pricing before they start writing offers would make sense. But having a partner like a Marjorie to get those numbers to them ahead of time makes a lot of sense. Number 2, buyers are payment focused more than price focused now. It's back to the old used car salesman deal. Like, what do you want your price to be, right? I hate that though. Many buyers fear buying at the wrong time, and they are negotiating harder because they feel they can, which I think is a reasonable feeling. So how do we position knowing those things? You must become an interpreter of affordability. You must become a negotiator and a confidence builder. A buyer often waits for rates to drop, but when rates drop, competition increases, prices rise, and negotiation leverage shrinks. So here's a simple phrase. If you're going to write anything down, write this one down. A simple phrase that you can use, okay? You can refinance a rate later. You cannot renegotiate the purchase price after the market moves. Okay?
Good one, yeah.
You can refinance a rate later, but you can't renegotiate the purchase price after the market moves. All right. Any thoughts on that, on buyers and realtor positioning with buyers? I have noticed in my offers lately with buyers that we're certainly getting have more room to negotiate, more concessions, all of those things, and I think it's also certainly good for you to understand all of the potential things that help a buyer, rate buy downs and all those sorts of things. And so being an expert on the mortgage side of this makes a lot of sense too. And so if you're not, I would encourage you to go sit down with Marjorie, buy her lunch or something, and have her spend 30 minutes educating you on all of the possibilities of what or tools that are there to help buyers right now. And so,
Right, and one of the things right now too, I know Jamie, several of you here, but we're seeing people right now, Ben, we just closed one, people coming to closing with nothing out of pocket, guys. This is the market to do that. Down payment assistance program, seller paid closing costs. You're not paying, people getting their earnest money back at closing, that's zero money to move in.
Yeah.
This is a time for first time buyers, for sure.
yeah.
I've told some of my buyers like that hokey saying, but marry the house, date the rate.
Yep.
35 a few years.
Yep.
Pay the appraisal fee basically nowadays to get refied.
Yep.
Some change.
And when the market changes, a lot of times it changes pretty fast, and so that's why having some phrases like that or like this one to are good, because if they have the desire to purchase but they're waiting on that rate to drop, it's really not the best move, because when it does drop, price goes up, competition goes up. Those of you in the room that have been here 10 years, 7 years, y'all will remember back. It's probably been 3 years ago now. Almost every house we sold had multiple offers, and the vast majority of those sold for over list price. I had a client moving here from Miami, and they wanted to be in Plano. They specifically had to be in Plano, so that was the only place. And we made offers on 7, 8 houses, lost all of them because multiple offers. They ended up having to pay $100,000 over list price to get a house in Plano at that time. And so that's how drastic a market can change. And so right now, the buyers have the potential to get, I think, pretty decent deals. I'm personally closing on 3 houses today that I'm buying, that I'm probably buying them all $60,000, $70,000 under market value as they sit right now. because it's that kind of market. And so,
Based on what you could actually buy them for today, or what they used to be worth?
no, but based on what I can resell them for right now, so
Oh.
I could turn around and sell it today probably and make a $200,000 profit. Buy it, sell it tomorrow, 200,000. You know, but that's because there are motivated and desperate sellers out there right now. Which is what we're talking about next. Is what are sellers struggling with and thinking about right now?
Can I ask a question? It might be both buyer and seller side. So, what are we seeing as far as like running accurate comps versus appraisal values? Because I ran comps on my listing,
Sure.
and I comped it at like 330, 335 on the high side because it was in pretty decent shape.
Yeah.
You know, the sales price they had listed was too high. Offer price was even, well, it was lower than the sales price. But anyways, the appraisal ended up coming back fine. I don't know what the final number was,
Sure.
but it was definitely 10, 12,000 higher than I had comped it.
Okay.
And I comped it on the high side.
Sure.
So I didn't know if anybody else had seen kind of what that's looking like. 'Cause I know back in COVID, appraisal price didn't matter.
I mean, I'll tell you when I am listing right now, and I think this is, you know, we go back to one of the points is that priced right houses are still selling, but houses that are priced too high are sitting, right? And so there was also something earlier that said that, you know, one of the difficulties in this is telling the truth while still maintaining your trust, right? Is being able to say, hey, you know, you need to price it here if you want this thing to move, because if you don't, we're going to sit there. And so if I'm in a market where the market's doing this and going up, I'm going to price towards the top of that market because it's moving towards me, right?
Right.
In a market where the market is really kind of moving downward in a sense, I almost, to price ahead of the market, I need to price it a little bit below the top comps so that the market is moving towards me.
Well, I was gonna say, we're filming this while I'm scooting over here so the camera can see. I have seen, even with the house that Post Oak Fund 3 bought in Broken Bow, you know, that appraised 150,000 higher than we paid for it. And a phrase that, I forget, I think it was whenever the Fed met, I know they've met multiple times, but the Fed had a meeting, this was probably a couple of months ago, and I think someone there, I didn't watch it, that's what I was told, said the market is stuck. You know, the market is, like, yeah, we can all say the market is not great right now. The market is not awesome. Stuff is not flying off the shelf. I think 2026 is a lot different than 25 was as a whole already. But he said the market was stuck. So in relation to stuff appraising, I think with the feeling of a stuck market, we list a house for $450 and it gets $410, and our sellers are like, "Ooh, praise the Lord, we got it sold," right? But then, you know, a year ago comps could have been, or 2 years ago comps could have been $450, and that's what we price it at. And we think, man, we're really probably not going to get that, and then we don't get that as a sales price. Yet it still appraises for where we were. So it's almost as if, I don't have the actual like data answer for you, but it's almost as if, in relation to your question, like appraisers, the people on the forefront of seeing a change in the market and appraising properties day in, day out, looking at contracts, looking at properties that are being sold, houses or land, doesn't matter. It's almost as if the market being stuck and higher rates is obviously, we felt this for over a year and a half, is obviously causing people and allowing people to sell for less than they are listed for. But I think to the appraiser, it's not necessarily making or meaning that the house is actually worth so much less. It's that to get it to move, to unstick, it's almost as if the seller has had to say, okay, fine, I'll come all the way down to that if it just means I get it sold. And I'm
So
not
I'm
saying
really saying that that's the appraisal value of that house, because
like a
it's-
450
yeah,
sells for 410, it's only worth 410.
right,
Not
okay.
necessarily. Now though, what do we have to deal with? We now have to deal with that house or that piece of land as a comp. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I know you want me to list this. This just happened in your neighborhood. We have no clue what it appraised for, which is why we feel kind of prices are coming down and down and down, or but then in the same breath, I went 40. Not personally, my buyer, on behalf of my buyer, we went 40K over 3 weeks ago, and 70K over won it. So we missed it by 30 grand, and we went 40 over. Unique situation, 24 acres with a really nice shop, no living quarters. But what had happened, I know the agent really well, and I was like, hey, where'd we miss? He's like, oh, you only missed it by 30, jokingly, right? And I was like, well, how? He's like, well, the seller told me not to consider the value of the shop in the property. Well, I could recognize that whenever I looked at comps, and someone came in with cash. So now appraisal really doesn't matter, but in a market where stuff seems to be selling for less or negotiating down, yeah, super duper actual reality. But by pulling comps, like where do we provide value? Ben has said it and mentioned it off of the notes here. Like, people want to be able to trust you and you know, to be able to feel that you know also what you're doing, which we can dive into that as well. That's kind of like a subcategory. But ultimately, like, I recognize, like, man, this is probably worth, I think it was listed for $660. I was like, this is at least worth $700. And someone paid $730. We went in at $700. So you just kind of seen it across
I heard
the
this
board.
analogy one time that I thought was good. Is an appraiser is kind of like a WebMD, right? You go into the web and you type in your symptoms and it spits out a potential diagnosis. Where a realtor is more like a doctor that you see in person and he goes, okay, yeah, your symptoms is, but it's because you're fat, right? Or it's because you're a smoker, you know. Where the WebMD doesn't see those details of the neighborhood, doesn't see the details of the house as much. Where the appraiser is just looking at this data, right? It's all data driven, and the data sometimes paints a picture, and you know, and sometimes can be accurate, but there also are other extenuating circumstances. And how many houses are listed in the neighborhood right now, and how many, you know, how good of a condition is this
Well, and a prime example would be, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, based on the comps, this is what I feel like your value is. Well, Zillow says X. Well, Realtor says Y, right? And so that's another example where we come in, you know, as the doctor in this example, and we say, well, yeah, you know, Zillow's based on a tax algorithm, as it is. But, you know, based on these factors, this is where we're going to be on list price. The question then becomes, when the factor is your house is a hunk of junk and you haven't taken care of it, you know, like, where does that come into play? That's all kind of like in your positioning and how you set that up.
I think it's good too to ask your clients, you know, what's the motivation here? Is the motivation top dollar, or is the motivation I need to get this thing sold? And you know,
They're right here.
If the motivation is top dollar and they're willing to sit and wait on it, like, okay, we can go by the data. If the motivation is to get this thing sold, then we need to price it accordingly. And so I had a listing recently that the neighbor literally across the street, as I'm putting the sign in the yard, the neighbor across the street came over and go, hey, can we see it? I'm like, sure. So they looked at it while I was putting my lockbox on and stuff, and they're like, hey, we want to buy it and sell ours. We needed something bigger anyway, and we didn't really want to change neighborhoods, so this is perfect. And so I said, okay, do you need to sell yours to buy it? And they're like, yes. And so I'm like, well, that's a contingency. I said, you know, my seller may or may not go for a contingency on this house, but, you know, if we price it well, I can, you know, maybe, you know, so how bad do you want this deal? I mean, are you willing to price it to move your house quickly? And so, and I'm not talking $100,000 undervalue, but if the comps are, you know, 450 to 480, you know, are you willing to go in at 450 versus the 480, which might sit there? And so, and they did. They priced it and moved in 3 days, and they got the house across the street, and I got 2 sales. But right now, if you don't price it well, it's gonna sit, and that's just how it is. Now, there are also nuances to. There are particular segments of the market that are hotter than others. You know, the lower end stuff always moves well. So let's talk about the seller side of that. What are sellers struggling with in seller psychology? Many sellers still think my neighbor sold for X, so mine should too, right? But buyers now compare aggressively, all right? Overpricing leads to stale listings, and stale listings lead to lower eventual sales prices. And this is really something you have to convince your seller of up front. Stale listings lead to lower eventual sales prices. and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But here's how we position ourselves: become a truth teller, not a promise maker. All right. Strong listing language. The market does not punish honesty in pricing; it punishes optimism that ignores reality. Market does not punish honesty in pricing; it punishes optimism that ignores reality. Teach this, okay? The first 14 days matters most. Y'all hear that? The first 14 days matters the most. That is the golden period. You are more likely to sell at a higher price during the first 14 days. So if you say, oh, well, let's just price it high and see what happens, okay? Well, seeing what happens in this market means you're going to be beyond 14 days and you've lost your best chance to get multiple offers to sell at a higher price. Why do things sell better in the first 14 days? One, you have kind of the feeding frenzy phenomenon, right? It's new on the market. I want to get it before somebody else does. You also have the, if anybody has been looking in that area and the listing comes on the market, all of those email pre-saved searches on Netris that go out the day it comes on the market. And so you get a whole lot more eyeballs on your listing initially. That's why I just think it's crazy that a realtor puts a listing up with maybe like cell phone photos that I'm going to come back with professional photos in a week. Well, all of the mass emails that just flooded out on day one went out with your cell phone photos because you didn't do a good job of getting the photos out there. I literally saw a listing photo yesterday that was so dark that it looked like they took it at midnight, and you could not even. And I'm like, I'm increasing the lighting on my laptop to try to see the house, and it's amazing how bad some realtors do at some of that. But that's part of the reason that matters. If overpriced during the first 14 days, showings slow, leverage weakens, and listings just become stale. And once it's stale, buyers start to ask, what's wrong with this property? Why has it not sold? Why has it been on the market for 100 days? And if it's been on the market for a long period of time, buyers now feel that they have reason to lowball you. They're desperate. It's been on the market for months, right? So if you just priced it a little lower to begin with, you probably would have gotten close to listing price offers in the first 14 days. We're now 90 days later, we're getting offers that are, significantly underpriced. So, any thoughts on sellers before I jump to the next part? Condition also matters pretty significantly right now, and I'm going to just really talk briefly about that. I've said something about telling the truth multiple times, and I've included that in here because I can't tell you how many times I've seen agents, not that they're lying, but they're scared to tell the truth. You walk into somebody's house and it's ugly, okay? And you don't want to offend them, so you take the listing in the ugly condition that it's in and then wonder why that house doesn't sell. Or wonder why your client gets lowballed and is not happy with you in the end. One quick example of this, just to give you like a really practical example. I went on a listing appointment, it's been a few years ago, in Highland Village. And basically my process is I ask for a tour of the home. So they give me the quick tour of the home. And as I'm going through the tour, very nice house. They've updated the kitchen, great backyard, sits on a cul-de-sac, lots of nice things about the house. And then kind of the last spot we get to is the master bedroom, and it's a nice big master bedroom. And then they walk me into the master bathroom, and I'm like, it's got like a brown swirl tub, and it's one of these giant jacuzzi tubs, and they've taken that cultured brown swirl marble up the back wall, and then they've got a pink swirl vanity, and it's hideous. It's probably one of the worst bathrooms I have seen. It had not been updated since 1978 when that house was built. Okay, So ugly, there was a giant gold swan bathtub faucet, okay? Hideous, right? That thing might have been cool if you put it on some newer stuff, but bad. And so I don't say much as we're in the bathroom, but then we go and sit down at the dining room table, and I happen to know that I'm the third or fourth realtor to do a presentation for them, and I only got in by the skin of my teeth because they knew someone that knew me, and they had told me on the phone before I ever got there, is like, hey, we pretty much committed to listing with somebody else, but because you know so and so, we told them we'd give you a shot. All right, so I'm in this thing not in a good position to start with, but I sit down and you know, I've pulled comps and I'm showing them the comps, and I said, can I just address the elephant in the room though? Is your bathroom is hideous. And if I'm a buyer and I walk in here, I'm thinking, hey man, what a great house, what a great yard. And then I walk into your bathroom and I'm immediately going to the next house. And I said, have y'all thought about, you know, maybe updating the bathroom? And here's where this comes in. It's like the skill that you should have. As I said, I can help you with that if that's something that you, I mean, I have the contractors, but if that's something you would consider, I think you can get $30,000 more for this house if you put $10,000 into your bathroom. And so we're talking a $20,000 difference in price. And they kind of looked at each other and laughed, and they go, it's funny that you bring that up because not one of the other realtors have brought it up, and we hate this bathroom. And we wondered why no one else had brought it up. And I said, well, that's what I first thing I notice when I walk in, and I have a feeling that almost every buyer who walks into your house is going to feel the same. And I said, you know, if money is the problem, you know, I think if we updated it, we could probably sell this house really quickly. It's like, could you put it on a credit card? You know, is there a solution? And I said, I also have contractors that might be willing to get paid at closing, if that's something you want to do. Anyway, long story short, I got the listing. We updated the bathroom, listed it $30,000 higher than any other realtor had told them the house was worth. Sold it for $10,000 more than that above list price, and sold it on the first day on the market. And so, but it was just because I was willing to tell the truth about their hideous bathroom, right? And so you go into listings like this where you know that, hey man, if this one thing was addressed, this would be a much easier sale. I have one right now. I have a client who has got into kind of some financial issues. They own millions of dollars worth of properties, but they've gotten to some cash flow issues because rates have adjusted, and they're hurting financially. And so they called me in and said, hey, here's our portfolio, we got to do something. And I said, well, what's vacant? You know, what do we not have to deal with tenants on? And say, well, we got this one house in Mesquite that the tenant moves out next week. I'm like, perfect. Let's list that house and get you some cash in the bank. And so I went down and looked at it. They told me what they wanted to list it for. And I got there, and I know these people have no money right now. They are cash, depleted. And I go down there and I'm like, dang it, this has been a long-term rental, and it looks like it. And in this market, something that looks like that, unless you're gonna discount it, is not gonna sell. And so I went back to him. I said, hey, I know this is not what you want to hear, but if you want to get top dollar for this thing, we need to paint it. We need to do, and I had a list of about 10 things. And he's like, man, we don't have the money. I said, if I can get the contractors to get paid at closing, or I'm willing to front you the money, would you do it? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And so called a couple contractors. Caden's there right now painting it, right? Called Black Bear Painting. They're down there painting it right now. We move forward, and I'm going to have a much more sellable listing because we could have a hard conversation about what the truth is on that house and how to get it sold. If I'd taken the listing as it sat, I guarantee you I'd still be sitting here 3, 4, 5 months from now with a house that has not sold, wasting my time, wasting my energy, and wasting my marketing dollars, right? We're not in the business of sticking signs in yards. A lot of realtors do that, and then at the end of that, that house does not sell, and it expires, and it moves on to a different realtor because the realtor did not understand their job. Your job is not to take listings, it's to sell houses, right? And I'm being kind of blunt because I can't tell you how often I see this happen, not necessarily in our office, but agents take deals all of the time that are unsellable at the price and at the condition that that house is at. Very early in my career, I went on a listing appointment, and it was my first big listing appointment, and it was a big giant house on like 30 acres, and I had a conversation with the guy, and he's showing me around. He's like, we brought these beams in from Vermont, we brought this door in from Italy, and they had just really spectacular house. And he told me they wanted to list it for $3 million. And as a brand, I'm 21 years old probably at the time, thinking, awesome, yeah, $3 million. And then I went and ran comps, and it's a $2 million house. And I went back to him and I said, man, I can't do it. I said, comps are $2 million. I'd be happy to list it closer to that. But it won't sell for $3 million. And he literally got mad at me and called my broker at the time and complained about me. And my broker called me in. I had him have a meeting with my broker, and he's like, why is this guy upset? I'm like, because he wants to overprice his house, and I'm not willing to sit on it and spend my money. And I'm like, he's also going to want really high dollar marketing. He's going to want to put in magazines, and he's going to want to put on, stuff that costs me money, and I'm not willing to, list something that will not sell. And he goes, you did the right thing. Great job. And I'm like, yes. And you know what happened? I watched that house over the next 3 years, and like 4 or 5 different realtors listed that house, and then expired, and then listed it, and then expired, and listed it, and expired. That house never sold. He still lives there. And you know how much all of those realtors spent in marketing? Because he wanted it in the expensive magazines, and he wanted it in all the different places. Tens of thousands of dollars were spent marketing that home. And you know who paid zero of it? The seller. Realtors did. And probably most of those realtors are out of business now because they don't know how to run a business. Fair? All right. So you're going to run across those things. Tell the truth. Number 4, North Texas specific forces right now. Texas continues to benefit from population growth, from business relocation. I just heard this morning on the way here on the radio, this Iran war has brought me back to talk radio. I haven't listened to talk radio in years, but I just kind of started listening to talk radio again to see what's going on. But I heard on the radio this morning, 3 large companies closing up shop in California, moving to Texas. That's been going on for years, and it's still going on. Infrastructure expansion. You cannot drive around DFW without running into road construction being done. Dallas-Fort Worth area still has strong long-term demand, migration from higher cost states, and investor interest, though more selective now. Local variation matters. Aubrey, Salina, Prosper, Denton County, Collin County all behave differently. So you have to know your local market. And honestly, I think that you all should be you should have hyper local knowledge. And because your hyper local knowledge beats any national headlines. So you should know your market intimately. You should know what builders are there. You should know what they have to offer. Corbin was in the office the other day looking at houses for his first client. And we just briefly said, hey, let me show you how to find him a couple others, right? Whatever it is or wherever it is that you specialize in, you should know it like the back of your hand. And that will give you insights. So that, I think, and those last things I just talked about, is the positive spin on all of this. Again, don't get any fear because this market has changed or seems a little bit worse. That actually can be a great thing, okay? Market share is built in tough markets, okay? I'm probably, with the exception of Marjorie and maybe Jamie and Landon, the only person who's been licensed long enough to see an entire cycle. Where, like, when did you get licensed?
13.
Okay, so
I'm still on the like when this finishes up, I will have seen a cycle.
So I think I got mine in 2004. So I had like several years of a really good market, straight into a 2008 to 2012, downward spin.
I've heard this market 24 and 5 was rougher than 08. Can you elaborate?
I don't know that I would say it's rougher.
Different, but different in their own way. Both are tough. What are the
Yeah.
differences?
The thing, I mean, it's certainly different because 2008 to 2012, the driving thing that, like, if I pointed to one thing that, hey, that was that market, was foreclosures, right? There were foreclosures everywhere. And it's funny, Corbin was working on a HUD home the other day, and so I was trying to get him logged in and realized, like, our HUD deal expired 2 years ago. Yeah, and you know why that hasn't come up? Because there haven't been any HUD homes in the last 2 years. And so out of our 150 agents, there's not one person who's asked to do a HUD house in the last 2 years.
There's one in Texas right now.
What's that?
There's only like one in Texas
Yeah,
right
I
now.
think, well, there's one in Denton because Corbin was trying to bid on it.
Yeah.
But in 2008 to 2012, at any given time, there were dozens of foreclosures on the HUD store and on every other foreclosure website. And so that was the big differentiating factor. But there's a lot of similarities. They're not HUD homes now, but there are similarities in sellers who cannot sell or who are sitting and are motivated because of that. And so here's what I want to say, though, about that. Having ridden a full cycle, the vast majority of my wealth and market share was built in those downturns. Hear me out. The vast majority of my wealth and my market share was built in downturns. Wasn't when the market was great. I made money when the market was great, but I gained market share and I grew wealth when everyone else thought the market stunk. Okay, and so position yourself to take advantage of what other people are fearful of. And that's this concludes my part of this talk, but that's what I want you to take away from this is, like, this market can be great if you will really pay attention to details, price it well, have truthful conversations with your client, make sure the house is in a condition to sell. Don't waste your time and take listings that won't sell. But really understand how a buyer is seeing the market, how a seller is seeing the market, and then be able to guide them through that process. I started off by saying one of the things that's interesting about this is, because you hear a lot of talk about AI and a lot of different things, people aren't going to need realtors anymore. Actually, when the market gets tough is when they need us more, and when they want us more is they want someone to guide them through all of the landmines and all of the ups and downs of a difficult market. You think you have a trouble understanding what's going on in this market. Think about someone who is not immersed in real estate and what's going through their head, and they're making the largest financial transaction of their life a lot of times, and that can be nerve-wracking if you don't know what's going on and don't have someone to guide you and to calm you down and to assure you and give you confidence. And so some of the things that we talked about, like just, hey, yeah, you can refinance rates later. Don't worry so much about the rate. Worry about getting a great deal and then refinance later. I'm buying 3 houses this afternoon, and it was a deal where when I got it in contract, it was a desperate. The reason I'm getting it $200,000 under value is because the seller is desperate and needed money in a week, and I can do that. And so I have a deal with a bank. They know me, so they can close me in a week. But the bank actually screwed me over here because they knew that I was in a situation and they're going to pay for it. But they gave me a higher rate than what they gave me 3 weeks ago when rates have dropped since the time I got my last deal, and just because they knew I only had a week, and I've already sent them a nice letter reminding them that I have done millions of dollars of business and have significant amounts of money in their bank that's about to leave if they don't make it right. But long story short, because I don't even remember where I was going with this. What's that?
Adjustable rates.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it that rate, the higher rate, because I can figure that out down the road because I'm getting such a great deal, right? So the rate, yeah, I mean, I'd rather have a lower rate, but I'm getting it at an awesome price, so I'm gonna deal with it. And so, anyway, Landon is gonna jump now into how we should position ourselves in these markets, and so.
Have at it. You don't
I'm gonna-
Peter?
I've got that up.
Yeah, you're good.
So.
I typically, I think there's, let me see how many minutes are on this card. Because I got one card today. 36 minutes, so we'll set a timer for 30. How about that? All right, so I have always understood, I'm gonna cough, just so y'all know, I apologize, I've been sick for a few days, but I'm better now, just congested. I've always thought the idea of keeping emotions out of real estate is really, really, really important. If it's your own personal transaction, okay, fine. And I'm not saying that you have to be emotionless, but a lot of times, keeping emotion out of it is super important. Going completely against that, and let me say this real quick, we had 10 talking points, and I may hit some of my 5 through 10. But what I'm going to go do is kind of drill down on how do we make this practical, how do we put this into action, how are we talking to our buyers and sellers. I'm going to kind of jump around, but back into the emotion thing, how do we feel? Someone tell me, like, what is the real estate market for you right now? What is our emotion in it? How do we feel?
Hopeful.
Hopeful? Okay.
It's hard for me to tell because I started right before the holidays.
Yeah.
And so it was like nothing. But I feel like hopeful's good because from what I've seen already, it feels like it's actually moving a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I don't know because I haven't done a spring market yet as a
Sure.
realtor, so that's just my experience.
Yeah.
I do like hopeful. I'm gonna piggyback off of that.
Perfect. Anyone else? Even if it's over the last year coming into where we are today. One more.
I feel like the market's heating up a lot more than it did last year.
Okay.
I've seen stuff, even in my own neighborhood, where I kind of laughed at where they had it priced, and it went under contract
Yeah.
in like 2 weeks.
Sure.
But then the house down the street did not, and you can just kind of, like I said, it's all condition. It's a mix of condition, pricing it right,
Yeah.
and marketing.
Yeah, perfect. So I felt the same. It needs to be said, not because no one realizes it, but I think it's really important to highlight, like Ben has good stories and is in unique situations. We could even say financially, he said he's closing on 3 houses today, not for clients, that he is buying for himself, right? Has a relationship with a bank, with a line of credit. All of these things are valuable. All of these things are good information, things we can utilize and learn from and have learned from today. I think there's also, he mentioned money, a lot of money is made, a lot of wealth is built in the downturn of a market, right? A lot of wealth is created in those moments when you have money to spend, not exclusively. Let me be very clear, not exclusively, but a lot of times wealth is built when you have money to spend. I do not have relationships with banks. I cannot buy 3 houses today. I do not have, whatever he said, a lot of money in the bank that's going to leave if they don't make it right. All of those things are fine. All of those things are fair. He can do whatever he wants, right? But a situation for myself, and maybe for some of us or many of us, is we don't have the ability to do that. That's not good or bad, but we can put ourselves in a position of being able to do that by learning how to simply make more money right now, today. Ashton said hopeful. as did Brittany. But the idea of, but I was going to pull on the idea of like 5 years in the business and then just started. And then to go off of what Travis has said, like in 2025, I had 2 listings expire that should never, ever, 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 ever in a million years should have never expired. Ever. Amazing. Prosper. Quarter acre. Corner lot. Humongous pool. Like everything you could ever want. 4 minutes from the town center there. I mean, it is the Taj Mahal of location, yet it expired. So I'll go back earlier to what I said about the market being stuck. I too have felt it tick up quite a bit, but the idea of, okay, great, you guys have felt it change. I'm still trying to figure out how to get clients. I'm still trying to figure out where to get started. What does that look like? Ashton, if you don't mind me calling on you, like, what does that look like for you? Like, I know that you are young professional, you are professional, you're an adult, like you've had jobs before. Like, what does this look like for you as you're starting your career in real estate? It doesn't have to be every single solitary thing you do, but like, what is that focus for you?
Like to get clients.
Yeah.
This is a test.
Pass or fail.
Right now, I really like just the straight referral because relationships are important to me.
Sure.
And so, fortunately for me, I do have family that's been deep rooted in the community, and I worked at a community bank before this. So, really, it's just being obnoxious online and reminding every single person I'm a realtor now. Like,
Sure.
Look what I'm doing today. This is what I'm doing, and I have random people that I did not even think would ever message me reach out to me. And so staying top of mind is what I'm trying to do right now because it's also free and I don't want to spend a ton of money on marketing. So that's what I've been doing. I do go to like events in the community, but most of the time it's with my husband and his bank, but it still gives me another free opportunity to introduce myself and tell them what I do. And one thing in one of the, I don't remember if it was Andrew or you, in one of the trainings I came to, y'all mentioned just like being intentional with what you already do and not feeling like you have to go out of your way to meet people, but stuff that you do day to day. Like if you're involved in your church, like talk about like, hey, what do you do? And then they'll ask what I do. I think you may have been the one who said that. And
It was probably Landon.
and
He's full of that
it was one of y'all, and just like being intentional with that instead of like so that it just kind of comes up.
Sure.
I guess is really, I mean, that's not really much, but that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, no, I like it. And you know, I used to be, I probably still would be if I was just like all out, completely entirely focused on only sales and production. All of that to say, I would, and what I used to do a lot was very intentional with my database. Birthday cards, anniversary cards, home purchase anniversary cards, ways to interact with them, simply ways to take care of them. Something that I've said for many years is that we're paid in relation to how we make people feel. That could be a direct message, that could be a text message, a video message, but it's showing up in those ways. And like you said, like you go to events with your husband and yeah, sure, okay, fine. The event's really not for you. It's not really for your job, but it's being able to put a face with a name and say what you do and who you're with and all these different things that just kind of plant a seed. And so there's a quote from a guy that I know, and he said that we don't have to remind people that we are in real estate. We just have to remind people that we exist, right? Yes, post about real estate. Yes, though, post about non-real estate stuff that you're doing on the side for fun, on the weekend, to show them that you're not just a work robot, right? And that, you know, give them something to relate to. That's a really, really important thing as you're building a business, things that you can relate to as well. Let's jump sideways here and talk about one of Ben's first points was, you know, in North Texas markets, we're seeing well-priced homes still selling, you know, poorly priced homes are sitting. We get that. It's data. Great. We can look at it on the computer. We can discuss it. how are you guys having, or even maybe what are your questions that you might have about having conversations with sellers? Because we're not immune to the idea of someone saying, I want $650. Well, you're worth $575. What do you want me to do about it? Right? Like, so then what questions do you have? What situations are you seeing right now? Let's learn together, collaborate as we break these down one by one. I'm not even at the moment going through what I was set out to do. I'm breaking down what Ben has covered with dialogue and conversation. So what are we seeing? John, I know you went on a listing appointment this last week. How did that go? What was the situation? Brief as you can.
So I have one up in kind of like the South Gainesville area. It's got some acreage, like 16 acres, 2,900 square foot house, and I think they have kind of an idea in mind based on probably what they're finding, online, looking at AI comps type of thing, stuff they've been receiving from their bank, like, hey, refinance, this is what your house is worth, sell it now, type of thing. Now I've talked with Landon and Ben quite a bit about this one, just because I think they're in their mindset. They've got this. At some point, the bank told them, hey, this house is probably around $1 million. Then it dropped down to like in the 900,000 range, and we were getting more like in the mid to high 7 range, and right around 8, ish.
Which was based off of photos from an old Zillow listing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So then you go and see it, and what?
Went and saw it, and actually, house has some promise, and they're in the middle of pulling all the flooring up. They have a wood floor guy coming out, putting stuff down. So I mean, it's gonna kind of be in that more sellable 8 to 850 ish range. But in their mind, they've heard 900, they've heard $1 million in the past, and they're kind of stuck in there. So we're kind of in the process of trying to whittle them down a little bit, and it's and I think the AI stuff is going to make people put into ChatGPT or any other search engines, hey, what's my house worth, and it'll come back, and I think that's kind of screwing things up a little bit too, because it's
Did they mention that?
They did not. They have not yet. They mentioned the banks. They keep getting letters in the mail from banks saying they refinance, or hey, your home is worth this. I think the last one they received was in the last couple of months over 900, and that's kind of where their mind goes. And then Zillow shows like high 8s, the estimate stuff. And
have you had people mention AI before using ChatGPT for valuation?
So another listing that I have coming up. They've run through stuff before. I don't know what they're using, but they're saying the research that they've done, putting it into online searches and stuff like that. And I think that's what they were referring to as AI stuff.
Okay.
So
has anyone else gotten that?
I have on my last one.
Okay.
Or the one I just listed, and they were pretty. But my clients are conservative too, so they undershot what it was saying, which is about right. So they were close on theirs.
Yeah.
I listed it for $648, and the comps were showing a little bit higher than that, but then there were some of their stuff isn't updated, so you got to take some out. Anyway, we're hoping to get 600. Really,
Yeah.
620.
Sure. Okay.
They really need 620, or they can't do it really. But.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This kind of goes back to like the appraisal thing earlier.
Mhm.
The last consult I did, it's a vacant house. They're kind of facing, so it was an elderly couple. Husband passed away a year and a half ago, so they have a 6-month timeline before they get hit with capital gains for the widow. Widow's in a nursing home, so house is vacant, but it's kind of like out in the middle of nowhere. There's no sold comps for the last like 9 months, within 30 miles of it, because it's middle of nowhere. There are active listings, but they're all like over 200 days on market. So they wanted to do like a pre-appraisal to try to figure out where they should be or what it would be worth. Appraisal came in almost $200,000 under where the houses are currently sitting for over 200 days. So I don't know how to like advise that situation.
Have you pulled comps on it?
Yeah, but the comps there's nothing sold. It's all just active.
So give me
high
like
market.
super duper. My watch died, so I'm watching the time here. Give me super duper like brief rundown. It's X amount of square foot. The other comps are here. They
They're all
appraised it here.
between, like ours is 2,900 square feet. Comps are all between like 2,500 and 3,000. They're all on between 2 and 10 acres. It's rural. There's like, some of them have views, some of them have wells, some are cities, some are like, it's really hard. But like the comps are all sitting between like 9 and $1 million, and appraisal came in at 7.
Okay. First and foremost, we can tackle this later on the computer,
Yeah.
but answer would be if they're in that capital gain threshold, they're within 2 years. The market hasn't super duper gone up in 2 years, so the question then becomes,
Well, they've had the house 15 years, but when a spouse dies, they have a capital gain window for 2 years to sell the house. The widow can sell the house without having to pay capital gains at all from the point they purchased it, even if they had it 5 years, 15
so 15 years they have more than 500,000 in equity.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, if it was in the 2-year threshold for anyone else that comes across this, the question then becomes, if that's the scenario, no one passed away. I didn't know that once a spouse dies, that's the rule. But for anyone else that comes up against that, my question to my client to help them self-discover would be, is it more important to pay a little bit of capital gains and sell it now, tax on capital gains, or is it more important to wait 6 months and not have that at all? Okay, so then a step further with her scenario, stuff is listed 9 to $1 million and appraised for 700 on the dot. What was she
705.
going to tell you to ask for it?
Well, so it's power of attorney. It's the family members because she's in like a memory care unit,
Okay.
and she needs the money to pay for her memory care unit from the house.
Okay.
She's good for like a year. We can talk about this later too, because this is not going to
Yeah.
fly. Like,
Yeah, well,
Lifespan.
we can, because there's a lot of different ways we could chase that out and
Yeah.
and keep that moving. We can have that conversation when this class ends, and anyone can be part of it, and we'll open the computer and look at it. What are our, let's look at this real quick. What are our buyers feeling? Yes, there's marry the house, date the rate. All those things are true. You can refinance at any time. However, with that being a saying, and although it is true, the reality is the right now, and the reality is that $2,400 a month for a $280,000 house is too much for me right now. Well, I can refi later. Sure, you can. Or maybe an agent or a lender says, well, you can refi later. How are we overcoming, or what questions would you have for me on overcoming those obstacles? Are we having those obstacles? If not, we'll move on. We have 10 or 12 minutes left on the card. The card can shut off technically, we can keep going. But what does that look like for us? Are we having those conversations? Do we have buyers in those scenarios? What questions do you have about that? I can help give answers. Not all of them are probably gospel truth, but like, what questions do you have? Otherwise, I'm just going to start rambling. So here's your chance.
I don't really have questions. Obviously, my buyers want lower rate, but that's
Sure. So lower rates can
That's
be
not-
achieved.
stopping them. But I have seen a lot of like rate buy down conversations happen.
Yeah.
For representing buyers, like going into it like, okay, well, let's look at this and we can talk about getting a rate buy down.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of times I find myself in those scenarios, piggybacking off that, is I push them back to the lender immediately. Don't have a rate buy down conversation with me. I don't know what it costs. I don't know what the impact is. I don't know how it changes your rate. And another thing about that is it pushes them back to a trusted resource. It also allows you to show up as the professional and stay in your lane at the exact same time. Because if you're over here trying to discuss a rate buy down, it's like, well, it could cost this, it might change it by this. Just go get the answer, because what I've noticed is with buyers, I have buyers all the time. Well, we're really not in a hurry, and we'll figure it out. You know, if we like something, you know, we'll know at that moment. I'm like, great. Go talk to a lender, because then it's 300 miles an hour. They want to see a house every day. They have a bunch of questions, and all that is fine and good. But if you will push them back to the lender, they can get answers. They can get real-time data and be able to make a decision. I had someone call me, a past client in Carrollton, and say, hey, we want to be in this school district. If we can downsize, I can stay home with my youngest. And we're not moving unless it's in this neighborhood, but we need to downsize so that we can use one income for the house because I won't be working. Might not move, but just so you know, this is what we'll be looking for. And I'm like, okay, thanks. I can't do anything with that, because you need to know what today's rate, because they bought in 19 or 20, So it's like, what is today's rate going to do to a $400,000 house? So I said, go talk to the lender, figure out what that is so that we can move in a direction that actually makes sense. Because if we're just hoping that this works out, like what's all in front of us? We have to list your house for sale. We have to get it sold. We have to have the other one under contract. All these different moving parts become super, super crucial. And when people, yeah.
Oh, I was going to kind of refer back on some of this with sellers and buyers, like to what Ben was saying about just being truthful.
Sure.
I've had some where I guess I was just honest with them. Like they were trying to, I had one couple that were trying to sell their house because they were in a pickle for payments on stuff. And I was like, a new house is not going to be cheaper per month. And I'm like, well, I'll go to an apartment for 6 months.
Sure.
And I was like, do your rent times 6 and just go gone.
Yeah.
You know, from your account. And I was like, just sit tight for, you know, how long do you need? Like, well, if we say for 6 months, then we could do it. And I was like, do that. Stay in touch with me. We'll keep going over market prices, stuff like that. If something goes crazy, either way, I'll let you know. And I got a referral from them for some of their friends that I've already closed with since then. And I'm helping these people look now. But sometimes just being honest with them will pay off for you in the long run. / we're still looking. It's been delayed, which, you know, sucks. But if that works best for them, I've been doing this for 11 years now, and I've had lots of people where 3, 4, or 5 years later they hit you up because you were so good the first time, and they just want somebody. You don't have to be 100% the best. You just got to be the best in their head.
Sure.
You know,
which is back to the awareness thing,
so, you know,
staying top of mind, as Ashton said.
Be
like,
legit. They
that's
can help your
super important.
So Landon, a lot of my people, a lot of the people that kind of can't afford the $280,000 house right now at regular market rate, that don't have the money to buy down, can't, you know. I mean, we've gotten like one of the ones I'm closing. Marjorie was talking about. We did get like $17,000 in, you know, closing costs. So it was able to work for her. But the one, it's pushing them to the new builds because of the fixed rates. Like right now, D.R. Horton has 3.99 fixed in the Crum one, and so a lot of my people are starting to just go there so they can get them lower. I know. That's just
so many buyer incentives too.
Yeah, and so
buyer
that's what's doing.
Like one resale.
Yeah.
And then they see the price difference and they end up with new build even though they don't want a new build.
Yeah.
Because it's
Sure. Well, it's because they want what? They want the house. They don't want the rate.
a lot
So
of
when
them
there
are
is a
trying
solution,
to,
we can be helping them to that.
they try to avoid the new builds because they're so much harder to sell because it's a new build neighborhood and all the taxes. But then when you compare the payments and the rates and all that, the now usually overrides the future benefits of not being in a new build.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I'm going to close on this. And then, of course, any questions you have, if that turns off, it doesn't matter. But I think this is important. I'm going to lead off with, I don't sit on social media and judge people's posts. I don't care about social media, but my point is this, one of these notes that we have says, hyper-local knowledge beats national headlines. There was a national headline that I saw shared by the Dallas Morning News or something on my Facebook feed. I don't follow Dallas Morning News, but there it is. Probably because it has to do with real estate, so it's in my algorithm. I'll start off with everything you read from a national headline or headline position. Not everything you read is worth sharing. Share away. I'm not going to judge. It doesn't matter. It truly does not, because maybe that is a way that you're showcasing you're in real estate. But y'all know what the headline said this morning? New bill passes. Investors cannot buy single-family homes. I didn't read it, but I'm going to probably say BS. You can't tell investors. You can tell whatever these hedge funds and whatever and BlackRock or whatever it's called that are buying just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses. Okay, fine. But in Dallas, Texas, you're not telling an investor who's buying 3 houses today. Ben. Okay? If that law passed, Ben would have been part of it. So maybe that's the point in and of itself. But into hyper-local knowledge, I would even maybe tailor that down into like a niche market. I know Heather lives over near Decatur, Ponder, that area. So maybe her niche market is the Denton, Corinth, Decatur, Ponder, Crum, Sanger, like whatever, and all that's fine. I've gone from Oklahoma to downtown Dallas in one day trying to work with buyers and sellers. So I'm not saying you have to be locked into this one single area, but the more you know about that area, the better you're going to be for your people. It's also going to be positioning as well. Where is this person? Because the consumer's going to say, oh, well, this person was at Trinity Street Coffee in Decatur. Oh, I've been there before. Connection. Didn't have to talk to you, didn't have to meet you, just you were at the same place 3 weeks apart. And it's not that there's a connection and they say, oh, we went to the same coffee shop, I'm going to call you whenever I have real estate needs. It's not really a thing. However, being in those areas, being in the market in which you operate, and having that hyper-local knowledge, it's always going to beat national headlines. I almost connected to the computer or connected to the TV and was going to run through all of the stats. Although helpful, it's for Netris as a region. We're talking just north of Waco to the Red River and out to Paris and over to Wichita Falls. That's kind of the Netris region, give or take. But those are where those stats were going to come from. They weren't going to be Southridge, Forest Ridge, the McKinney neighborhood that you have a listing in. They weren't going to be those things. So having that knowledge hyper-local is good for two reasons. One, you have it. Maybe three reasons. One, you have it. Two, it shows local credible knowledge. But three, whenever you go and get that listing in the neighborhood, and the client pulls up the national headline, well, I saw this happen. Doesn't have to be anything with investors. I saw this happened. I saw this. What does this mean? How does this work? How does this affect me? Having that local knowledge and being able to disseminate that and explain to them and break that apart, that is really crucial. Now, for anyone that has thought, well, this has been kind of, maybe a little higher level or not as granular, because I can't sit here and have, we could if that was the entire class today, but I can't sit here and have a listing presentation in full and let you ask every single question you've ever received from a seller. My solution to that is you can just ask us. Pull us aside, John. We were on Zoom the other night for an hour and 15 minutes going through whatever day that was, 7 p.m. Going through what does a listing presentation look like? How can it work? What are the questions I might get? How do I overcome this objection? Well, I don't want to pay 6%. Well, I don't even want to pay you just 3%. Well, I'm not willing to pay another buyer. All these conversations are going to happen, so I am giving you express permission to please ask those questions. Time's up. There are no dumb questions. We all have heard that in every class we've ever been in since we were 4, but you're only going to hurt yourself, your production, your income, your clients, all the things that apparently matter to you because, frankly, you're here in this class. You're only going to hurt all the things that matter to you if you don't ask us questions. And it's not that me and Ben are the tell-all. You can ask anyone. You can collaborate with people in this room. You can ask Jackie. You can ask Andrew. But please, please, please ask questions, because none of this was... And we will have classes for this, but this was not like, okay, this is how you take care of your database. These are the touch points you could consider. This is where you need to find your postcards. This is where you need to find your birthday cards. This is what they should say. We have that. I can give you all of that. Today was more, as you know, just market update. Where are we? How are we feeling? What are our buyers experiencing? How do we work through that? Anything granular, though, please just ask. More than willing to give, more than willing to sit down and discuss that with you. One-on-ones, group, whatever that looks like, we are more than happy to help. So in closing, while food is being cooked, any questions? Anything else we should run through? A situation you're dealing with that everyone can learn from or hear about or understand?
I have the opposite. Normally you go in as a listing agent and the seller wants to list higher. I have one that the seller was like, well, I put it in my program and it came up at 260 and I comped it at 290, which he was fine with, but then he started kind of you could hear the hesitation in his voice when I was telling him about the comps. It was almost like a distrust in what
What's
I was
his
saying.
profession?
Pipeline surveyor.
What's his system he put it in?
I don't know what system it was. was some.
Well, I'll tell you this, it's not MLS.
Right.
Now, how do we have that conversation? You're an idiot, here's the numbers, right? Like, that's not a thing either. We can't come in with that tone, although it's a lot more fun. You don't get clients that way, though. But that conversation is, hey, more than happy to list it where you'd like. I think that this number here is justifiable for what you have. I'm happy to list it at $259.9, $260, whatever, for $260 instead of $290. There are a couple of things that could happen, right? So now we're fielding kind of how they feel. Maybe they want to be right. Let them. Who cares? Doesn't matter.
No, he was fine, obviously, with
Right.
listing it higher. But I was just like, look, here's what I'm seeing based on sales data. On the low side, I still think you can get 280.
Right.
But that house wasn't updated. It had green countertops. Like we talked about the condition.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you have these houses that sold, it would have put yours at like 325. So I think starting at a 290 is a good spot. And we can always lower it if we need to.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, if that's the case and they're, you know, kind of malleable and flexible with like how that is and what that is, that's totally fine. If someone ever wanted to list lower than I suggested, I would sign that listing agreement so fast it would make your head spin. Because everybody always wants the upper, and that's fine. It's your asset. You're proud of it. You live there. You updated it. Fill in the blank. Fill in the blank. It's yours. I get that part. But having those conversations too, sometimes people are not in it for the money. Ben has told a story at multiple different trainings of a older lady that, in conclusion, after Ben saying you're worth more, you're worth more, you're worth more, you got to get more, she said, Ben, I have money. I don't care. I need you to, maybe it was buy it or sell it, but whatever the thing was, I don't care. Position or not, when someone says I want to list it here instead of there, we just need to be prepared to have those conversations. The deeper question is, well, how do we be prepared for that? If you have that specific question, let us know. Today was kind of overview, market review, where are we, how do we feel, what are things, but by all means, let us know where to get more granular.
Sorry to make the meeting go longer, I guess.
No, do it.
But I've done a lot of them where you go in and they're either high or low or whatever.
Yeah.
And I will physically bring like my CMA and stuff with them and like just show them what I'm working with. And then like if there's a good example of a house, I'm like, your house is really comparable to this. And like I'll just email them the old listing for that house so they can see all the pictures. Or if they're like, I think it's worth this, and there's like one that was amazing.
Yeah.
Like this is what we're competing with, and
Sure.
or if they think I've had a couple where they thought it was worth less, and I'm like, this is a crack house. Like your house is way nicer.
Yeah.
You know, like
I've even taken them to some of them before.
Yeah.
If they're really unrealistic, be like, okay, you think it's that one? Let's go look at it.
Yeah.
And then they walk them through it and be like, you think yours, you know.
basically trick them into having their own conclusion that's the same as yours. I guess tricking's not the right word, but like just lead them there to
Sure.
see how you got
Oh,
there.
show them the data, the
Yeah,
evidence,
exactly.
the property, the comps, you know?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else before we close? No? Cool. Meeting adjourned. How's food coming?
I don't know. Smells good.
Cool. Right on. Well, thank you guys for coming. We appreciate it. We'll take this recording and get it onto probably an unlisted YouTube link. And if you guys, we'll send it out, of course. And if you want to go back and watch it or pause it or whatever, you certainly can. So it's mainly for the people that weren't here. So yeah. Awesome.
Thank you. Great
Thank
job.
you. Wonderful job.
Hey Ben, what's the time frame on food?
Is it, how far out are we
Okay.
talking?
It's like not, it's a little even outside of
Hey,
our
Lane,
sure.
territory.
Let me go
So,
put this camera real quick. One second.
it's like between
Hey, I did
here.
read that article that you were talking about.
The what?
The investing article.
Yeah.
Corporations, they don't want to